to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Hello and welcome to the MMA Fan Show. I'm Stu Riffin. Joining me as always, Blake Harrison. How are you, mate?
Yes, mate. Very, very good. Very good. Good to be in a safe space where I don't have to listen to my family belting out the soundtrack to Wicked, which has been going on relentlessly in my house, in the car, in the kitchen, before bedtime. There's a lot of Wicked songs being sung.
My youngest phoned me from university yesterday to tell me that she'd seen it and was losing her shit at how amazing it is. And and my eldest is beyond hype to go and see it this evening.
Yeah, no, it's, to be fair, we went to see it over the weekend. It was good. It is good. It's a good musical. It's funny. It's good. The thing is that Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are very, 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 very good singers. I love My Wife and Kids. They're not Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. So, you know, I mean, even if you lived with people that had that good a singing voice, do you reckon you'd be able to take it constantly? Like, do you reckon, like, you've interviewed loads of musicians and stuff like that on your other podcasts and stuff. Do you reckon that there's people that are just like, it doesn't matter if you're Adele, Cynthia Erivo, it doesn't matter. Just shut up. I'm making dinner and just shut. Do you reckon that goes on? Or do you reckon people are like, no, they're just so good, I could just listen to it all the time?
I think if I sort of got in from walking the dog, you know, about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was just making myself a coffee, and all of a sudden, like, Christina Aguilera started going, like, warbling all over the place, I think I'd just be, oh, shut up, will you? Fucking you.
I'm trying to listen to the MMA Fan Show, love. Come on. Yeah, I'm trying to listen to them spit some knowledge.
What about you? And, you know, you've done a bit of stage work. You know, when we first started doing this show, you was doing you was in theatre. I know your fellow in-betweener, when he was at a wee one, old James was in Les Mis, wasn't he, when he was a little lad?
Oh, yeah, he was.
Where do you stand on having a little sing-song, if you had to, if work?
I've done a couple of musicals, 2019 or something like that. 2019, I think it was. I did Waitress on the West End.
Oh, of course, you done Waitress, didn't you?
Yeah. But the thing is, I was the comedy role where it was like, I could sing and my singing was fine, but it wasn't like some of these amazing. Yeah, me. Yeah. Me and people I paid, they said my singing was just fine. And the most I could get them to say was fine. They wouldn't lie any more than that.
I like the thing Gary's next door saying, kids keep singing because Dad's going to chime in a minute and it's awful.
No, my singing is all right, but it's not proper West End, like, amazing standards or anything like that. But doing the comedy roles, you can get away with it a little bit more. So, like, you can almost, like, there's some things you can sing, or there's some moments where it's not, you know, you're playing the character and the comedy of it more than people are there for your voice. And you can get away, as long as you make people laugh, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, yeah.
Are you a fan of the musical in general?
Yeah, I'm starting to think people are going to switch off because this.
No, you know,
welcome to the Musical Fan Show. I mean, it's certainly. I mean, we might find some kind of really weird cross section of society. People that are huge UFC and MMA fans, but also just can't wait to see Wicked. Just can't wait. Gotta love a bit of Alphaba. And there you go.
Amazing. Well, look. We're here today to discuss the upcoming event that drops this weekend, which is UFC 310. This card has kind of, it's crept up on us, it feels. I mean, I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I've not even seen the Figgy fight yet. I've missed quite a lot.
You're looking quite tanned, and look, the sun is glaring through the blinds at me, and I have to try and like look at that. Like, for anyone that's just listening to this, I apologize, but I look genuinely dead, but not just dead. I look like the corpse has been reanimated in some way because my face is so pale because the light comes through the blinds here, and
Yeah.
you're looking incredibly nice and healthy and tanned. I'm actually going to get up and shut these blinds again to try and get rid of that. So you can talk to the people while I do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we should make a little. I'll tell you what I can shout out now. I can shout out Fat Candy. So Fat Candy sponsors the MMA Fan Show, and they do freeze-dried sweets, and they do all the kind of sweets that you grew up eating, the sort of ones that if you go up see Wicked, then and you want to take in the contrabands, you don't want to pay 350 quid for a bag of pick a mix at the cinema.
Yeah.
Get yourself some Fat Candy, because you'll get your blackjacks, your fruit salads, your cola cubes, all of them kind of old school retro sweets, your drumsticks, wham bars, and all of that. But they freeze dry them, so they just kind of go, and they just become these big sort of. It's really hard to describe what it becomes, and so I would suggest that you go and get some. So buy their pick a mix bag, because you get a bit of everything, so you can work out which one you like the most.
It becomes a sugary delight, is what it becomes.
It does become a sugary delight, Blake. Exactly that.
And we have a discount code.
Yes, we do.
Sweet MMA. That's SWEET MMA. And you can get a little discount. So don't say what you don't spoil you.
Yeah, head over to Fat Candy. Just Google Fat Candy and use that discount code. So,
right, UFC 310.
It feels to me that it's sort of crept up on us, because when we spoke briefly yesterday, and I sort of pulled up the card to have a look to start doing a bit of prep, I was like, this could be one of the best cards of the year. This is like...
stew with it.
No, listen, right? What I'm going to say is...
You say stuff like this all the time. Your memory is so short, and I know it's your age. God bless you, Stu Whiffin. God bless you. I know it's your age. But this very year, we had UFC 300.
No, I know, and that was great.
You can't say this is one of the best
that
cards
London
of the
card.
year.
It was nearly as good as the London card. What I'm saying is the other cards that have come since, like the big numbered cards, have been great, but a lot of them have been top heavy. And so my point with this card is I think it's pretty consistent throughout. So that's my point.
Okay, so we waded through the initial sentence to get to what you're actually trying to say, which makes some sort of sense. But we had to friggin' chop through the leaves and the thorns.
Well, we had
to
get
get
to
what you meant.
You just thumbed in another joke about my age. I'll tell you what, Fat Candy. If you start doing Werther's Originals, I'll buy a job lot.
But no, I think you're right. And I think the best comparison is like most recently, like UFC 309. You had John Jones and Stipe at the top. You had Oliveira and Chandler in the co-main. Those four names are probably bigger than any other name. Actually, they are. All four of those names are bigger than any other name on this card, I would say. However, this card, top to bottom, is a way better card than UFC 309. There are people's recognizable names throughout pretty much every fight. There's really... stakes are so high in some of these fights as well. And some of the matchups are just really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So this is a better card.
There you go. Thank you.
It's not the best card of the year, is it? We've had UFC 300.
But I'm saying it's up there with one of the best cards this year. That's what I'm saying. You've gone right around the edges, but ultimately you've agreed. So that means
I definitely have not agreed with you. But look, let's start with the main event. The little boys.
This is unusual, isn't it?
It is unusual, and it's not what the UFC wanted. Obviously, this was supposed to be headlined by Bilal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. We can talk about this when we talk about the Shavkat fight and Garry coming in and replacing Bilal. There could have been an interim title put on it. They could have kept Shavkat at the top of the bill or something like that, and I think they maybe would have done had the right guy said yes. However, that hasn't happened, and you've got a quite crazy situation where Alejandro Pantoja, yet again, he did this earlier this year. I think he headlined a card. Was it maybe the Steve Erceg one or something like that? Yeah. And I don't know that the pay-per-view buys were great because sadly, as much as Pantoja's a fantastic fighter that puts on incredibly brilliant, entertaining fights,
he's not box office.
The flyweights aren't box office. They're just not. And I think the UFC had a problem with one of the greatest fighters of all time in Demetrius Johnson with that he just, other than the hardcore fans that know how bloody good this division is, a lot of the casuals are looking at them going, it's the little boys, we don't care, which is such a shame because they're so skilled and there's some really good talent in that division at the moment. But it's even more interesting that he's not fighting a Brandon Moreno or even a Brandon Royval or even a Steve Erceg. He is fighting a guy that's making his UFC debut in Kai Asakura. Now, I think I speak for both of us here. Correct me if I'm wrong when I say neither of us know a huge amount about Kai Asakura.
Or Ryzen.
Or Ryzen, really. I mean, we're going to delve into a couple of little interesting things about Ryzen as this conversation goes on and the differences between Ryzen and the UFC that could play a really integral role in how this fight plays out. But first things first, you've got Kai Asakura coming in for his UFC debut. We have heard from fighters we've interviewed about how the UFC kind of pressure just hits that little bit different. I think Garry is who's on this card, one of the most confident people we've spoken to. He even sort of mentioned, like when Bruce Buffer's saying his name for his debut, he was like, oh, that kind of got me a little bit. And other fighters have mentioned it. And it's there in the results as well. I mean, you look back at some UFC champions that when they made their debut, and they were sometimes seasoned vets, you look at the likes of Eddie Alvarez, went on to be a UFC champion, lost his debut to Donald Cerrone, I believe it was. Rafael dos Anjos, went on to be a UFC champion, lost his debut. Leon Edwards at the time was a bit more green, but he lost his debut as well, I believe, and then went on obviously to be a champion. Luke Rockhold went on to be a champion, lost his UFC debut, and I know he's not champ now, but we always reference Magomed Ankalaev as a guy that could very easily be the best light heavyweight on the planet. I know Alex Pereira and his fans would have something to say about that, but there's a very good case and argument that Ankalaev would beat Pereira and is the best light heavyweight on the planet. He lost his UFC debut to Paul Craig in a fight that he was dominating until the last few seconds. So it does hit differently. Like, how do you think someone like Kai Asakura, who is a star in Asia, he is a big star. He's sold out like arenas and he seems to have a lot of popularity in Japan. But do you think that UFC kind of environment, press conferences, not just being his debut, but headlining the whole card, do you think it's going to hit him in a surprising way?
I don't know. I mean, if he's, I look through his record. He's fought a lot of people that are, that I'm sure are very, very high level mixed martial artists that, that I haven't heard of because I'm not overly familiar with that organization. But I did see that he's got a loss to Manel Kape.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I expected when I heard that he was making his debut for a title shot that I'd go to his record and he'd be like 19-0 or something. And he's got a relatively mixed record. But I'm imagining he's fighting, he must be headlining them cards in Ryzen. So I'm sure he's used to the pressure. I'm sure he's used to huge crowds in Japan. Which I'm sure, you referenced Garry there. And I mean, we was at Garry's last fight in Cage Warriors before he went to the UFC. And, it was a very different sized audience and occasion. I don't know how big those Ryzen crowds are, but I don't know.
I think they can be quite big.
Yeah. So I'm sure he's probably, being used to the sort of the roar of the crowd. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's in Vegas, isn't it, this weekend? So it's it's not in Pantoja's back garden. So that bodes well, I think, for I don't know, and where the crowd are going to side. Are they going to be intrigued to know who this new kid on the block is, or are they going to lean towards their UFC recognizable champion in Pantoja?
I think the crowd's going to be on Pantoja's side. I don't know, but I imagine they'll be on Pantoja's side. I think also something interesting about you mentioning that Manel Kape has beaten him. He's 1-1. Kai Asakura is 1-1 with Kyoichi Horiguchi, who is very, very good fighter and has fought the likes of Sergio Pettis over in Bellator. I think Pettis got that spinning back fist knockout of him, and he's had a loss to Patchy Mix as well. And no shame in that. Patchy Mix is a phenomenal fighter. But Kai Asakura is 1-on-1 with Horiguchi, and Horiguchi trains with Pantoja. So that could be of real benefit to Alejandro Pantoja if he's got someone with him, training with him day in, day out, and he's been in the cage, or, well, not the cage, that's another thing, a ring, been in the ring with Kai Asakura twice. That could be of huge benefit to him. And I've just mentioned there, one of the things about Ryzen is they don't fight in a cage. They fight in a ring. How much is that going to impact the grappling? We know Pantoja is a dogged grappler. Very, very solid, dogged grappler. If he gets hold of Asakura against the fence, is that just going to be quite foreign territory for Asakura? Is he not going to know, that there's certain aspects of, fighters have told us before about training in the cage is different. You need that time. Being up against like even the wall is one thing, but being in the cage and feeling it against your back and all these things, it's just different. If you've been doing most of your fights in a ring, then that's a huge factor of the game, especially when you're fighting someone like Pantoja that you're not totally accustomed to. And I think that could be a really interesting dynamic in this fight. And also the other thing with Kai Asakura that a lot of people are saying they're not worried about it. Dana White has said he's not worried about it, and Kai Asakura's team have said they're not worried about it. But Kai Asakura he's never missed weight, but he's not fought at flyweight since 2017.
He was the bantamweight champ over in Rise.
He was the bantamweight champion. So he hasn't made that weight cut in 7 years. That's a long time. Your body changes. It gets used to different things. He's going into this fight not only having not made that weight for a long, long time, and the UFC, really, can you imagine this? For the last pay-per-view of the year, Kai Asakura misses weight, so the title's not on the line. The last pay-per-view of the year, there's 0 title. I mean, it won't actually bother me. Well, no, it will bother me a bit because you want the stakes in the fight to be right up there, and obviously fighting for the belt's what it's all about. But I'll still be very interested in that fight and how it goes, and I'm obviously super intrigued by many other fights on the card. But that would be quite a problem, I think, for the UFC, and I think they'll maybe be reflected in pay-per-views if not only is this being headlined by Pantoja and a guy making his debut in Asakura, which, as I say, the hardcores will be interested, but maybe the casuals won't be. But also, then you add the fact that maybe at the last minute, there's 0 belt on the line. I think that is actually going to be a bad look for the UFC. So I think they're really praying, fingers crossed, that Asakura does make weight. But the other factor... Go on.
You're going to make weight, and your debut fight in the UFC is for the belt. You're going to make weight. You've got to make weight.
Yeah,
like,
but
where do opportunities like that ever come along?
I know, and I'm not saying he won't drag himself through hell to get there, but the human body can only do so much. And I don't know what he walks around at and how much weight he cuts to just get to bantamweight, let alone flyweight. It's just an interesting little wrinkle in the story of the lead up to this fight is he going to make the weight? And I hope he does. But on top of that, not just will he not be used to making that weight, so as the latter rounds come into it where Pantoja just stays so relentless and dogged, as we said before. Another thing with Ryzen is they do 3 5-minute rounds even in title fights. They don't do 5 rounds. So the longer this fight goes, you've got to favour Pantoja because he's used to this. The last 3 fights he's had have all been decisions in title fights. Kai Asakura, as far as I'm aware, has never been past the 3rd round. So that's another factor in this where you go, the deck does feel slightly stacked against Asakura for this fight.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that. But I don't know. Can you train your cardio so that's not going to be a problem? Or is all the training in the world not the same as where you've got a dogged brawler like Pantoja that wants to take you deep into them rounds and ragdoll you and grind you down. I think that's going to be interesting. Look, I think this is a really exciting fight. I think the fact that you've got the madness of a debut being for a title, it's like, I've said this so many times over the years on this show. It's the Rocky story. You get that opportunity and he's got the shot, and it's like, this could be really interesting. And if he wins, it's going to shake up that division, because
that division does need a bit of shaking up.
It does, because everybody fought each other like 50 times. It's like, but and also I'm sure Manel Kape would be thinking, I'll put me out in, I'll put my name in there. Like, I think, take nothing away from Pantoja. He's done everything you'd expect from a champ, but there's only so many times you want to see him fight Moreno. That said, Moreno looked fucking incredible last time out.
Yeah, he did.
What would happen if they fought again? Usyk had his shot. I think he was lucky to get his shot.
Yeah. And Brendan Royval's lost to Pantoja a few times. Kape's lost to Pantoja before. That's the thing. Pantoja had such a long run to the belt. Pantoja had such a long run to the belt that he sort of picked everyone off on the way.
Yeah.
So it's all rematches.
Yeah. All right. Shall we talk about Shavkat and Garry?
Yeah. I mean, look, before we do, I just wanted to say that, because I feel like I've really made quite a strong case that Pantoja should win this fight. Asakura does look very good, and he looks very good on the feet, and he looks like he's got a lot of power. And I think if Asakura were to knock Pantoja out or something in the first 2 or maybe 3 rounds, I wouldn't be completely shocked. I would favour Pantoja in this fight, but I wouldn't be completely shocked. And I feel like we do need to balance the scales a little bit, and also mention, Pantoja's getting older now. Pantoja's 34, smaller weight classes. He's heading towards that 35 mark, which is always, the kind of end of the line for champions in the smaller weight classes. So you never know. We could see, I suppose you would call it an upset.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you got back up on that fence there.
Well, it'd be Asakura's first time on the fence, so I had to get on there. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we was hoping to see, were we hoping to see Shavkat Belal? I guess so. But what is thrown our way now is, for Belal being out injured, with apparently, if what you see on the socials and such rings true, there was a lot of people offered this fight before Ian Garry. I'd be interested to know who they were. I'm wondering if Leon Edwards was one of those. And apparently everyone said no. And Ian Garry was like, yeah. And props to Ian Garry for that. And
I think props to both of them, because props to Ian Garry for sure for taking this fight. And I can only imagine that they really did go through that welterweight division, because Gary's last fight was by no means that entertaining.
What was it, MVP?
Yeah, the MVP one. So I think that, I reckon they went for a few names, and I reckon there was possibly names that could have actually got an interim title fight going. The person I think they probably wanted most of all, even though he's on a losing streak, would be Kamaru Usman, because he's a former champion. He's kind of a welterweight great, probably the second best welterweight of all time behind GSP. So, Usman is a massive name and would really legitimize someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov in a lot of casual fans' eyes.
I think we all thought that was the part we was going to see.
I think so. And I think if they'd have put an interim belt on it, it would have been slightly odd, because Usman's on a losing streak. However, I would have still been fine with it in the end. I would have got behind it and been okay with it. But clearly, Usman didn't want it. I'm assuming they asked Colby, because why the hell not? And I'm assuming he didn't want it. I don't know if Jack Della is still injured or something, so I don't know what's going on there. But maybe
I think Jack Della would have said yes.
I think because he called Shavkat out, didn't he, a while ago? But then the other thing is he's coming all the way from Australia. If he's not in camp and he's coming from Australia, maybe that's quite a hard one for Jack Della. I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who the other top guys in the welterweight. Obviously, Leon. I don't know whether Leon would have been offered it or if he was injured or what. I don't know.
Leon's apparently said that he's fighting in London.
Yes.
So
yes, so looks like he could be headlining in March at the O2. That is a fight night, but you'd imagine it'd be a pretty big fight, whoever it will be. Like maybe that would be a Jack Della or someone like that. I don't know. Or if someone loses this fight very, very quickly,
what I'm thinking
would be the loser of this fight. If Shavkat takes out Ian in the first round and a half, 2 rounds, Ian might go, I want to get back in there quick and I'll fight Leon. So who knows? But it's certainly an interesting one to see what the UFC wanted. They've landed on Ian Garry. There's no title on the line, but credit to Ian Garry for taking this fight because Shavkat is the boogeyman of the division, and he was preparing for Joaquin Buckley. However, you have to give credit to Shavkat as well because Shavkat was preparing for a completely different style of fighter. Like to be preparing for Bilal Muhammad, who's not the greatest striker, but he's going to try and wrestle the hell out of you.
Yeah.
And he's a pressure fighter as well. And then Ian Garry, you change into a guy who is tall, long, rangy, fights really well out the outside, great kicks. It seems like his jiu-jitsu is improving, but he's not necessarily going to try and take you down. He's going to try and fight on the outside a lot. Very different styles there. So credit to Shavkat as well for taking this fight. But this go on.
If you look to their records, I think this is a really well-matched fight.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, I don't think either of them have fought any better opposition than each other.
No.
When I went through Shavkat's record, in my head, I thought, oh, he's fought a lot of big names to get where, and he hasn't really. He's fought a very similar, both fought Jeff Neal, and it's very sort of similar sort of trajectories in the division. I think this is a really well-matched fight.
Well, the last 3 fights have been both fought Neil Magny, then both fought Jeff Neal, and then basically fought versions of the same guy in the one fought Wonder Boy, one fought MVP. So that's been really interesting. And I actually picked out the Jeff Neal fights to watch before for us to lead up to doing this show. And it's super interesting, the approaches they have to like the same guy and all that kind of stuff. Because when it comes to Shavkat, I think because he's got a lot of submissions, people think, oh, he's a Kazakhstani guy. He's probably like a big wrestler and he's going to take you down and submit you. That's not really his game. He does get body locks and maybe take that. And he might take that approach with Ian because he knows Ian's such a good striker. But actually, he loves to strike. He strikes a lot. And one thing with him that you really found in the Jeff Neal fight was he hits hard. He's very, very durable, though. He can take a punch. He got clipped a lot in that Jeff Neal fight. He takes a punch. But the thing that Ian Garry will be looking at is he gets hit a lot. Like, Garry is a way more defensively better, and I think technically better striker than Shavkat Rakhmonov.
They've sparred again, haven't they?
They have, yeah. They both were at Killcliff for a little bit, and they both maybe have mentioned how things went. Maybe they have different ideas of how it went, stuff like that. But Ian's moved on, got training different parts of the world now, has improved aspects of his game for sure. This fight is what MMA is all about, man. 5 rounds, 2 undefeated guys. They've sparred together a little bit. They've both had similar trajectories. So many questions are going to be answered at this fight. I'm so excited about this fight. As I say, 2 undefeated guys. Both have looked great. Both got like different styles, but have fought similar, if not the same, opponents on the come up. So it's going to be really interesting to see which one plays out. I feel like Shavkat is going to have the power and durability advantage, but I think Ian Garry is a technically better striker and will be able to be on the outside as much as he can be and pick Rakhmonov off. But if it goes to the ground, has Ian Garry's jiu-jitsu improved enough to match up with Rakhmonov? That's another interesting factor. I think this is going to be such a cracking fight. I cannot wait for this fight. And you would imagine that the winner of this fight is nailed on, no ifs, no buts. That's Bilal's first title defense.
100%. 100%. Who are you picking?
I'm just trying to make sure I haven't missed anything, but I don't know, man. I am well and truly on the fence on this one. Like, but I would lean Pantoja easy in the main event. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if Asakura does it. I don't know enough about him, but with all the experience, you've got to go Pantoja for me. In this fight, oh God, maybe you'd lean Shavkat just because the difference between the two of them in their resumes as well is that Ian's got a lot more decisions. Shavkat is finishing people. He is finishing everyone. He really busted up Jeff Neal towards the end of that fight. As much as he took a lot of punishment, he gave it as well. And then he choked Jeff Neal out. But Jeff Neal was on wobbly legs from the strikes. And he's just a finisher, man. He is finishing people left, right, and center. Whereas Ian, like when you look at the Magny fight, no, he didn't get finished, but didn't he 30-26 him or something like that? It was 30-25. He absolutely decimated him. It was one-way traffic the whole fight. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I think if you put a gun to my head, I would probably shout out Shavkat, but I don't know. And the other thing that I like about this fight as well is they're both young guys. Whoever loses this fight, I'm still not writing them off at all. I believe the loser of this fight could still go on and become a UFC champion. And I love that about this fight, that it's not like, oh, if he loses, he's a long way back, or this could be his last shot. No. The loser of this fight, I think we could see this fight again. We could see 18 months' time, we could see this fight again. One of them's the champ. It's a rematch. The other one's worked their way back. This could be who knows? This could be a great rivalry. And I don't mean a rivalry on the mic or anything like that, but just like two guys, the peak of their powers. Are they the best in their divisions? Oh, this could be the start of something great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Right.
Who are you picking?
I can't help but think there's a little part of me that thinks I'm going to see something very similar to what he done to Neil Magny. I think Ian Garry is going to just put on a masterclass.
I think the thing is he could that would be, for him to do that to Shavkat though, would be something else. Like if you put on a masterclass against Shavkat, if he say 50-45 Shavkat, like that, he's the best welterweight on the planet, isn't he? Like that. I think the other funny thing is that whoever wins this fight, whether it's Shavkat, Ian, it doesn't even matter how they do it really. I'm looking at the winner of this fight as the favorite in the Belal fight.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you feel the same way, or do you think Belal's skill set's just so different you can't say that?
I think the way that Belal took Leon to pieces, and just absolutely nullified his striking, and I think that Belal will do something similar to Ian Garry.
Interesting. Well, it'd be great to see. Welterweight division's looking good, man. We've mentioned this before. Some young guys, I really like Michael Morales. I really like Carlos Prates coming through as well. Obviously, big MVP fan, a Wonder Boy fan.
Question.
Go on.
Do you think they're going to give MVP Leon? I know that
I don't think so.
That highly, he shouldn't get that.
And he's coming off a loss, so I don't think so. I'd like to see him on the card.
Yeah.
But I don't know who he would fight.
Who was it that you said give Leon as a little comeback fight?
Masvidal.
No.
Yeah.
Was it?
And Masvidal looks like he might be coming back in April, but maybe they'll try and make him come back in March. Leon v Masvidal in the O2, where it all went down. The 3-piece and the soda. Finally.
Oh, brilliant.
I'd love that.
Well, another fight that's going to be going down this weekend should have been on the last card, I believe, and that's Garn versus Volkov.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a fight night headliner. Generally, I think this is an exciting fight. Volkov has been looking great. since
Yep.
he lost to Tom. Cyril Gane, you know, aside from that glitch against Bones Jones, was looking fantastic. It's the point of this fight that I want to discuss, because this is a high level fight in the heavyweight division. You know, I guess Pavlovich is still up there, and Curtis Blades is still up there in, you know, on the grand scheme of things as really fantastic heavyweights in that division. The winner of this, all right? So let's say Gane wins this, right?
Yeah.
Volkov's already got a loss to Tom. Gane hasn't. So there's definitely a world where I think the heavyweight division, if John Jones is going to just carry on being a fucking wally and blocking up that belt, does Tom fight Cyril Gane?
I think there's a very high possibility that the winner of this fight fights Tom, either for the interim belt again, which would be a shame, or if Tom is crowned undisputed because John vacates, then that's happening. Look, obviously, I want to see John versus Tom. That's what we all want to see. And that's what should happen. But I struggle to believe at the moment that's going to happen. I keep hearing conflicting things, but I'm not convinced at the moment, and I don't think I will be convinced until it's like fight week of that fight actually happening. I think that the winner of this fight could fight Tom, and I think for the sake of the division, for the sake of Tom, and maybe for the sake of eventually getting the Jones fight, it has to be a Cyril Gane win. Because if he beats Volkov, which he's already done very easily, if he beats him again, even if it's in, it can't really be in much better fashion either, then I just don't think it does much for Tom. I don't think it interests Jones. Whereas if Tom can go, oh, I beat Cyril Gane, and granted it's going to be hard for him to beat him as easily as John Jones beat Cyril Gane, but if he can just beat Cyril Gane in a round or two, again, it's no easy feat. I'm saying that like it should be easy. It's not easy, but that's sort of what you might have to do.
There's big flaws in Cyril Gane's ground game, isn't there?
100%. And you think if Tom can exploit that and get hold of him quickly, then that will, you know, maybe get Jones' attention, that he's like, oh, I've only got 2 wins at heavyweight. One of them is 40-odd-year-old Stipe that we all know deep down was a vanity project. And the one that I've been clinging on to, I beat Cyril Gane, who was an interim champ before. If Tom can defeat him in just as good a fashion as Jones did, that might get Jones interested. I don't know. Or at least put more pressure on Jones to take that fight. But ultimately, I think the winner of this might have to fight Tom for the division. It's better if it's Cyril Gane. But I don't know where Cyril Gane's head's at. Like, Cyril Gane's been doing movies and stuff. He seems to be enjoying an element of celebrity lifestyle.
Well, there's
over in France.
What that Aspinall fight, wasn't there?
But yeah, he's sort of, I don't want to use the term ducked, but a lot of people are using that term willy-nilly at the moment. But there was definitely an iffy moment where Tom went to Paris to watch Cyril Gane's fight, and Cyril Gane basically didn't mention Tom's name. And even Michael Bisping was there interviewing him, saying, look, Tom's over there. Do you want to fight Tom? And he sort of was like, yeah, well, I want this, I want that. And it was like, mate, you've avoided the guy that's come all the way to try and set up a fight for you, get interest with you, not in a disrespectful way, but in just a purely competitive
This makes sense. Look at the division.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
And because you did that, I think you didn't get a chance against Pavlovich for the interim title and stuff like that. So I don't know where Gane's head's at. Maybe he is worried about fighting Tom because of the ground game and stuff like that. But in terms of Volkov is predominantly a striker. And when you look at the first fight between Gane and Volkov, Gane picked him apart from the outside. Volkov was just too ploddy. He didn't have the dynamic kind of movement that Cyril Gane's got. And Gane was able to stay on the outside and just stay very safe. It was quite boring. It was very, very boring. That was 5 rounds of just a bit of dancing and a few jabs and front kicks. And it was not an exciting fight. Volkov's going to have to do something different to change this up, and maybe he's going to have to try and implement some wrestling, which might be difficult for that tall, slim kind of frame, because he's like 6'8", 6. No, I don't know. He's massive, Volkov, but I don't know how well because he's certainly slower than Garn. I think he's going to have to try and do something to get him close and take him down, something, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I wouldn't be surprised if this goes the same way as their first fight and it's a bit of a dull affair.
Yeah, let's hope not. Let's hope like Volkov's just thinking, if I can put on a masterclass here, then I could really find myself right up there in the mix of things again.
Mm-hmm.
Kron Gracie is making a return to the octagon. Not fought since May 23, where he lost to Charles Jourdain. I think he's on a 2-fight losing streak.
You look bored just talking about this fight, the way you're rubbing your eyes out. And I have to say, it's a weird fight.
Kron Gracie versus Bryce Mitchell we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Bryce Mitchell is a super fun fighter. You can say what you want about him, thinking the earth is flat and having 10 million guns in his caravan or whatever it is that he does.
He loves the baby Jesus.
He loves the baby Jesus. But, say what you want about all that stuff, and you're probably right to in a lot of cases. But as a fighter, I find him incredibly exciting. I love his grappling ability. I think he's great as a fighter. Kron Gracie is 5-2 and on a 2-fight losing streak. He should never, ever, ever be fighting a ranked fighter whilst on a 2-fight losing streak. That just doesn't make any sense. He's got a cool name. He's got that Gracie name. And yeah, he's got a great nickname as well, isn't it? Ice Cream Kron Gracie.
Oh, I love that.
See, I mean, that's almost
Gracie
worth it.
is such a cool name. Like that guy should fight crime. But
yeah, look, Mitchell is ranked 13th. He should be fighting a guy on a win streak in a really stacked featherweight division.
Yeah.
Who is up and coming and outside of the rankings. That's who he should be fighting. But he's fighting Kron Gracie, maybe because the UFC want to get him a win and keep him relevant because he is fun and a lot of people do like him, despite the reasons we maybe not as big fans of him. Other people will love him for all that stuff. So it is what it is. Be interesting to see if we get some kind of grappling match out of this, because it's where both of them are the strongest. But a lot of the time when that happens, you get a sloppy kickboxing match, and I would favor Bryce Mitchell in that. But I don't really want to waste too much time talking about it because it's a fight that doesn't make any sense. The other fight I wanted to just mention quickly as well, I have literally no notes, just one word, banger. And it's Nate Landwehr and Do Ho Choi. That fight is, for however long it lasts, is going to be an absolute banger. Nate Landwehr just comes to fight. He does not mess around. He comes to fight, win or lose. And Do Ho Choi, we've seen one of my favorite fights of all time against Cub Swanson. He can bring that as well. So I'm really looking forward to that fight. That is going to be an absolute banger. And that's all we don't need to dissect it. Just sit back, get your popcorn ready and enjoy that fight. Vicente Luque, go on. Did you want to talk about?
Well, we're on to the prelims now, right?
I guess so.
So that's Reyes and Smith are on that.
Oh, okay.
I never particularly get excited when Anthony Smith's name gets mentioned anymore. But Dominic Reyes, I thought, this should have been on 309 as well, I believe.
Yeah. It was booked previously. I know that.
And obviously, Reyes' career after the Jones win, if you want to call it a win, or the Jones loss.
Yeah.
He had I think four losses.
Including the Jones fight, 4 losses.
And then he was out for a while, and then we saw him come back and absolutely destroy Dustin Jacoby in a round. And I thought he looked fucking great. He said that he felt back to the fighter that he was. And so, I'm hoping we see a charged up, exciting Dominic Reyes on Saturday. And if we do get that Dominic Reyes, I think Anthony Smith's in for a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because, Anthony Smith is he's only about 36, which at light heavyweight isn't that old, but this would be his 58th fight. Like, that's a lot of wear and tear on the body, man. And you've got to imagine he's been very up and down lately. He had that brutal kind of knockout from Khalil Roundtree a while ago, where Roundtree showed so much mercy, could have dropped a few hammer fists on him and didn't. We've seen Anthony Smith just on so many occasions just either get badly knocked out or be in situations like that Glover Teixeira one where Glover was apologizing to him whilst he was beating the shit out of him and he was just getting absolutely done for like the whole fight. And people were saying the corner should have thrown in the towel in that fight. We've seen that with Anthony Smith, but then he comes back and he beats the likes of Ryan Spann or Jimmy Crute or whatever it is, which, they're not amazing wins, like in terms of like top 5 or title contender, but it's relevant sort of. And then Reyes, as you've mentioned, Luke's just broke that losing streak against Jacoby recently. I would like to see, it'd be really interesting to see the Reyes story have some kind of happy ending to it. Like, for him to be doing so well, come up against John Jones, in a lot of people's eyes, win and beat John Jones. He's the reason in a lot of people's eyes that John Jones left the light heavyweight division, because Dana White wanted to make the rematch because he was like, "That's too close. You got to make a rematch." And Jones was like, "No, I'm good. I'll vacate and I'll go to heavyweight, and it'll take me 3 years."
Just going to sit out until Francis has gone.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's been quite heartbreaking, really. I would imagine for Dominic Reyes to get so close to such a great moment in history to beat John Jones, and as I say, in a lot of people's eyes, he did. And then after that, lost to Jan Blachowicz, lost to Jiří Procházka, and then there was another loss in there as well. I can't remember. But, and devastating knockout losses, those two as well that I remember. So, yeah, not great. But he's coming back. Let's hope that maybe he can, rewrite this story a little bit and take it where he wants it to go. But I think given the 4-fight losing streak and given Anthony Smith having such an up and down kind of few years, I don't think it's a great look for the light heavyweight division that either of these guys are currently ranked. So as
a really good point, mate.
Smith is ranked 13th. Reyes, I believe, is unranked, but obviously if he wins this, he'll be ranked in the top 15. I don't think it's an amazing look that they're ranked in light heavyweight, given the nature of what we've just been talking about. A fight I would like to jump to and talk about, because I think it's been treated very harshly, is Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev.
What? I mean, Dana must really not like Aljamain, because this is
And Movsar.
fight, such a great fight, and it's not even headlining the prelims.
Yeah.
And this is a former champ and somebody who's currently 18-0. Like,
it's insane, man. It's insane. So I don't think Dana likes any of them. I don't really know what his massive problem is with them. It feels incredibly harsh treatment. I said Evloev undefeated. I mean, asterisk Arnold Allen. I do think Arnold Allen beat Movsar Evloev, but technically Evloev is undefeated. He's on an 8-fight UFC win streak. 8-fight UFC win streak. That's really brilliant. And Aljamain Sterling, former champ, got a win over Calvin Kattar in his last fight when he first stepped up to featherweight, and in dominating fashion as well. He dominated Kattar. This should be a nailed on #1 contender fight, really. I don't know. I know obviously Volk, you could do that rematch and he deserves it fine. Diego Lopez is obviously looking really good and he seems like the next guy up. However, Evloev has a win over Lopez. So if Evloev wins this, he should be fighting for the belt instead of Lopez. Aljamain Sterling, big name, former champ. It doesn't feel like they've been treated correctly by the UFC here. I don't understand it. And the winner of this fight, in my eyes, their next fight should or could easily be for a belt. But I don't know that the UFC is going to do that for them. I think the winner of this fight could end up having to get one more.
Well, let's imagine from what we've heard, Volk's going to be fighting Ilya next.
Yeah.
It's a fight I don't want to see. As much as Volk's one of my favourite fighters of all time and one of the nicest guys in the sport, I don't know. I'm no one will be happier than for me to see him do something remarkable against Ilya Topuria. But I think Topuria is the future of that division for quite some time. I think he's going to be a superstar. And so Movzar gets that shot and Russian wrestles him and gets the belt. I mean, that's not going to make a happy Dana, is it? Because that's not the most exciting champ. And, and I know that the champ to champs, it's mixed martial arts. You use whatever you can to win that belt. But we've seen that the UFC favors fighters that are exciting and that like to throw hands and get big KOs and stuff like that. Ilya Topuria. And so I think, it's quite clear that they've not really ever been a fan of Sterling. I think and I think that I don't know why. I don't know what their beef is. Whether he's difficult to work with, I'm not sure. He's looked after by Dana's mates. It's Ray, isn't it? And Matt Serra.
Ray Longo and Matt Serra.
Yeah. They're Dana's homeboys, and it was like you think that there'd be a lot of love there. I don't know, but something's happened, and because Aljamain Sterling, he's one of the best fighters on the planet. Like he's absolutely phenomenal. But to be put on a card in that place, to be put there, it's not cool, man.
It's not great. I mean, look, Evloev's come out and said, look, I don't care. More people will see my fight because less people will pay for the pay-per-view. That's probably true, but I don't know for sure.
There's logic to it.
There's logic to it for sure. But yeah, I just think it's a shame. I think these guys should be treated like the fight after this could be for the belt. And they should be given a better card placement and all that stuff. But maybe they don't massively care. They get paid the same. So whatever, they get an early night.
I think what we know with this fight is that your casuals are probably going to know who Aljo is. But what we're going to see here, I imagine, is going to be some very high-level grappling. And is that what people want on a pay-per-view? I don't know. Do casuals want to watch that? Probably not. Do they?
No.
I don't know. I don't really know why that fight's there. I think this is a really interesting fight, and I think it's going to have, a big, the winner of this should be, staring down the barrel of a belt. It should be there. It should be waiting for him. But I don't know. I think Volk's going to get that shot next, and I think if Evloev wins this, what else has he got to do?
I don't know. Maybe they'll make him rematch Lopez or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But clearly the UFC aren't massive fans of either of these guys, which is a shame. But I do think the fight will be interesting. We could see some really high-level grappling. I think that if it's on the feet, I think Evloev has the advantage. I've never really rated Aljamain Sterling striking, so I do believe Evloev will have the upper hand. And I think he's just naturally a bigger guy as well. Although I know Sterling's very long and he's like absolutely ripped. He's got one of the most ripped bodies in the UFC. But I do wonder if Movzar is just a bit naturally bigger. Maybe he's stronger. And therefore, I'm going to lean Movzar on this one. I think he's going to beat Sterling here.
Interesting.
Another fight is Luque versus Gorimba.
Luque should have been fighting Nick Diaz, shouldn't he?
Luque should have been fighting Nick Diaz. That was made twice. And that makes you worry about where Luque's head's at. Because twice he was supposed to be fighting Nick Diaz. And that fell through twice. There's not many fights in the UFC where you're sort of guaranteed a win. And I think Nick Diaz is one of the only fights in the UFC where if someone goes, oh, you're fighting Nick Diaz, you're like, oh, I'm going to get a win. Because it's Nick and he's 40 odd now and he's just clearly not quite what he used to be. And so to have that, to think you're getting that and train for that, I wonder if you are sloppy on the diet or taking a few sessions off here and there.
Yeah.
And then they're like,
Mm.
oh no, actually you're going to fight this up and coming killer in Garimbo, who's yeah, gonna really just go for you. I wonder if that might be a different. You're probably thinking, oh shit, really? I wanted Nick. Do you bring Nick back in?
Wanted that really massive name where everyone was going to watch me do a
Yeah.
number. Instead, I've now got a killer.
Yeah,
that's
I do
hungry.
think. Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? It's not ideal. And he's on a 4-fight win streak, Grimbo, as well. So, yeah, I think. Oh, again, just talking about the depth of this card, Randy Brown versus Brian Battle is a really good fight.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun. Both of them really great strikers. Brown's on a 3-fight win streak since his loss to JDM, which is no shame in that. Jack Della Maddalena, great fighter. Brian Battle's on a tear. He could be on a 4-fight win streak. However, he's got a no contest in there against Lusa because of an eye poke, which was a fight that he was dominating up to that point. So he could really have been on a 4-fight win streak now. The winner of this, I think, should get a ranked guy. You know, they're both really doing well in that welterweight division outside of the top 15. So give them a ranked guy. And it should be a really fun fight. I've always been a big fan of Randy Brown's style, and Brian Battle looks really good as well. Outside of that, you've got Chris Weidman against Eric.
Early prelims, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, Chris Weidman is a big name, but when this should have been in the last, this should have been on 309 as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think we might have spoke about it for 2 sentences back then and fell asleep. Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders, a fight that no one's really
No.
gives 2 shits about. Michael Chiesa is on this card as well, fighting Max Griffin. Could be an interesting fight, that.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hyped for Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper.
Yeah, man.
I think this is going to be a super fun fight.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it's literally probably one of the oldest guys in the UFC fighting someone who looks about 14.
Yep.
So I think this is going to be a super fun fight, that. Any of the others on the early prelims you want to sort of chat about?
No, I think we've mentioned everything. I mean, there are a couple of others, but right now, not worth mentioning. I mean, I think they'll probably be fight past prelims, and if you want to catch them, I'm sure they'll be fun. But I think we've probably taken up enough of people's time. But I think it's looking like a great card. Like, it's one of those ones where I will be very excited to watch the prelims as much as the main card, which I don't feel like I was like that on the last event.
Yeah, one of the best cards of the year. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. All right. Well, look, we'll be back next week. We should be back in the studio,
Finally,
face to face, to do our post-fight show, and then we get into that time of the year where Blake does these little bits of research into who we said was going to be the UFC champs this time last year, and then we make our predictions for next year. It's our little Christmas.
that is my favorite thing to do. Those are my favorite episodes. I love that. I love predicting who's going to be champs over the next year and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely tune in for that. We'll try and get some good stuff to it. They're quite long episodes though, aren't they? Those ones.
Yeah.
They're like, we go on a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but no, fun. I'm looking forward to those ones. We get that out probably, I don't know, early New Year, something like that, or maybe that week between Christmas and New Year. One or the other.
Yeah. Well, look, enjoy the fights at the weekend. If you're looking for something to have a chomp on while you're watching them fights, why not head over to Fat Candy, use that discount code SWEET MMA. Other than that, we will see you next week for the post-fight show. Laters.